Marijuana is the most widely used illicit drug on the planet. To many, it's an evil weed. But to some, it's a sacred herb.
It is our God-given right to use the tree of life.
Still, for others, it's a lifesaver.
I would have been dead from AIDS if I had not smoked.
For decades, the global supply of marijuana was controlled by criminals.
They're in it strictly for the money, and they're willing to kill.
But now, it's a quasi-legal industry worth billions of dollars, and business is booming. Producers, traffickers, dealers, users, doctors, police. They're all part of the $300 billion global industry that is Drugs Incorporated. Marijuana is a psychoactive plant commonly known as cannabis, grass, pot, or weed. Used by 167 million people worldwide, marijuana polarizes public opinion, with one side trying to legitimize the plant, and the other trying to wipe it off the planet. In 1970, the U.S. federal government passed the Controlled Substances Act, classifying marijuana as a Schedule I drug, just like heroin. This designates the drug as having a high potential for abuse with no medicinal value. But not everyone agrees. In defiance of federal law, at least 14 U.S. states now allow patients to grow or purchase marijuana on a doctor's recommendation. Chief among these rebel states is California. Oakland resident Juliet Hopper works as a management consultant. For the past 10 years, she's battled both cervical cancer and fibromyalgia, a condition that causes intense pain in her muscles and bones.
From my neck all the way down, I'm in a lot of pain. The best way I can describe an FM flare-up, which is what I'm dealing with right now, is someone taking a baseball bat to your major joints and just hitting you as hard as they can for hours. And that's the pain that you're dealing with. It's unending nerve pain.
While living in Ohio, Juliet took a large number of pain medications that slowly destroyed her liver and kidneys. Even though Ohio prohibits medical marijuana, her physician privately recommended she try it.
I've been using a measuring spoon to kind of create a diary of what works best for my pain management and my symptoms.
Marijuana contains a complex mixture of more than 60 unique active compounds known as cannabinoids. The two most abundant are tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, and cannabidiol, or CBD. When ingested, the compounds attach themselves to cannabinoid receptors, the molecules that affect neural signals in the parts of the brain governing memory, anxiety, appetite, coordination, and pain. Juliet uses a vaporizer to consume her medical marijuana.
It heats up the cannabinoids enough to be able to release the medicine as a vapor, but it doesn't get hot enough to where it's combusting the plant, which is usually the biggest problem that most people have with utilizing cannabis as a medicine, is that they see that combustion as putting tars and carcinogens into your body. Initially, Juliet was wary of consuming an illegal drug. I was the Reaganistic child of just say no, don't do drugs. Oh my God, cannabis will lead you to heroin. I think one of the biggest battles that any cannabis patient has is because we still feel guilty. Society tells us that we're doing something horrible.
In March 2009, Juliet moved to California so that she would no longer be breaking the law by consuming medical marijuana.
And it's almost like a nice little meditation ritual.
For Juliet, marijuana offers the chance of living a normal life.
Let's just alleviate that inner angst. It kind of blocks that feeling of intense pain, and I get antsy and edgy when I'm in pain, and I don't realize that I'm barking. And in my line of work, barking is not very useful. So it alleviates that, and it literally calms my psyche down enough to be able to focus and get my job done. And enjoy living. It's not necessarily a cure-all for everyone, but it's definitely something to try that won't kill your kidneys.
California's tolerance toward medical marijuana dates back to the early outbreaks of AIDS in the 1980s.
Hi, Greg. Have a seat.
San Francisco dermatologist Dr. Mark Conant is one of the world's leading AIDS experts. He's been at the forefront of the fight against HIV since 1981.
We were treating them with chemotherapy. That caused nausea and vomiting. So the patients would come in and say, I can't keep the medicine down. Have you heard, doctor, that smoking marijuana will stop the nausea?
What drugs are you currently taking?
Currently, I'm taking raltegravir.
There were other benefits as well. It relieves pain. It stimulates appetite. And the patients themselves discovered that smoking marijuana was more effective than any of the other things that we prescribed.
You lost weight.
Navy veteran Greg Scott, a patient of Dr. Conant's, was first diagnosed with HIV in 1987. His health rapidly declines.
Well, I was very sick with stage 4 terminal AIDS in 1993 and 1994.
Greg's weight drops due to the medication he takes to stay alive.
There was nothing they could give me except pretty much this one drug, AZT, that didn't work very well. And so I had wasted away to less than 120 pounds, and I was dying.
Greg suffers from a form of anorexia known as HIV wasting syndrome.
Sit here and face me.
Essentially dying from starvation, Greg begins smoking marijuana, which is known to stimulate appetite, giving users the so-called munchies.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah?
The marijuana keeps Greg eating, while better, life-saving HIV drugs are developed.
I would have been dead from AIDS before those drugs were available if I had not smoked to maintain my body weight.
In 1996, California passes Proposition 215, a state law allowing doctors to recommend marijuana to patients.
The doctor doesn't dispense it. The doctor can't write a prescription for it because the pharmacy doesn't carry it. All the doctor can do is to indicate that in his or her considered opinion, this patient would profit from using marijuana.
Once a patient has a doctor's recommendation, they can legally grow their own or purchase marijuana from a dispensary. This so-called cannabusiness is booming. Like ordinary goods, marijuana is subject to a sales tax. California has up to 400,000 medical marijuana patients. Serving them are an estimated 2,100 dispensaries and cooperatives. That's more than the state's Starbucks, McDonald's, and 7-Elevens combined.
How are you? I'm doing great. How about you?
Which is good news for Juliet Hopper. Today she's visiting the Harborside Health Center in Oakland that supplies her medical marijuana.
I am dealing with a flare-up of my FM today, and so I need something that's got a higher level of CBD.
Well, let's see what we have here.
Here, patients choose from some 100 different marijuana products that cost between $30 and $60 for an eighth of an ounce.
Something like this. This is an Afghani cross.
The Harborside has 38,000 registered patients.
We have created a 100% closed-loop distribution system that insulates our patients from any contact with the illegal market. The way that we do that is by only serving people who are verified as being legal medical cannabis patients and only accepting medicine from people who are also legally qualified medical cannabis patients who have chosen to join our collective.
Hi, Rick. Good, how are you?
Registered patients legally grow medical marijuana and sell it to the Harborside Collective. In the back office, they ensure the marijuana meets the high standards needed to qualify it as medicine.
Yeah, this is really nice. Nice manicuring job.
The buds are examined under a powerful microscope to check for mold or tiny pests like spider mites.
If you put this under the 200x microscope, you can see spider mites with their little faces and their little legs. They look scary. And we don't want that in any of our medicine. We don't want any of our patients smoking bugs.
The last 15 years have seen a medical revolution across America. Doctors are recommending marijuana for everything from cancer to stress. But critics say the system is abused by recreational users who exploit medical endorsement to bypass the law. Despite being legal under state law, dispensary owners still risk prosecution under federal drug laws, which do not recognize medical marijuana.
If I was arrested by the federal government and taken to prison and locked up, the very day that they released me, I would be back here and I would be serving patients again. And I would do so until they took me away in chains again. When you see people who are dying and who are suffering, whose lives are saved by this medicine, it's impossible not to.
The conflict between state and federal law also causes problems for patients like Juliet.
Will that work for you?
Looks great. Thank you. It's kind of a tough black cloud to live under, that you can't go outside of a medical cannabis state. You run the risk of either going without the medicine, which is not a choice that I'm willing to go. I'd rather risk being prosecuted than have to be without my medicine, because the pain is just not worth it.
The California medical marijuana revolution is powered by advances in horticultural science. By growing marijuana indoors, it can be cultivated anywhere on the planet. This revolution started more than 5,000 miles away, in Holland. Amsterdam. Like California, suppliers here walk a tightrope between what's legal and what's not. For For the past 25 years, Arjan Roskam has been at the forefront of the semi-legal Dutch marijuana industry.
Pretty good. My passion for cannabis started when I was 18. I was traveling around the north of Thailand. Arjan's Haze-1 is a very, very fine sativa, and it has a very nice menthol high. And I met a very old medicine man, and he was treating heroin junkies with marijuana. And he said to me that this plant has very, very big value for society. And he also said that the plant was so powerful that in the future it could overthrow governments. And when he said this to me, I thought, you're crazy, man. He basically said to me, go back to Holland and start growing this plant, and it will give you great benefit and wealth in the future, and it will make you very happy. And that's when it really started.
Holland is a small, densely populated country in northern Europe. It's famous for clogs, canals, and sex and drugs. The climate in Holland isn't suited to growing marijuana, so Roskam experiments with growing it indoors.
When I was 18 in Holland, nobody was doing this. I was the only one, 2 or 3 more guys, so I had to learn everything. I would try out 4 different nutrients in one plant variety, and the next time I would have tried out 4 different lights. And the time after that, I would have tried out 7 different companies of soil with one variety. So in the end of the crop, I can really see very clear which soil for which particular plant would have been very, very good.
Growing marijuana indoors requires powerful lamps that replicate the sun's light spectrum. During the initial growth period, the lamps operate for 18 hours a day, imitating long summer days. Then the timers are reduced to 12 hours a day, and the plants believe it's fall and begin to flower. The flower, or buds, of the female plant contain the most THC, the psychoactive compound that produces the high. This illegal grow room is owned by one of Arjan's contacts. The plants are grown from seeds that Arjan developed.
And this is Arjan's Ultra Haze-1. Very, very nice sativa, maybe one of the best in the world.
In 1993, Roskam enters his pot into the Cannabis Cup, a U.S. competition sponsored by High Times magazine.
They really liked my stuff, and they said, this is the new kid on the block, and this is the stuff we really should all smoke.
Winning the competition changes his life. The magazine puts him on the front cover, and overnight, Arjan becomes a celebrity pot star.
They gave me the nickname King of Cannabis.
This is what we call royalty. Cannabis King. Salute.
Demand for his product soars.
We had so much coverage that all the tourists came to Amsterdam and came straight to us.
Roskam founds the Greenhouse Seed Company, a legitimate business selling marijuana seeds around the world. He no longer grows illegal marijuana. His plants are now grown legally outside of Holland for the specific purpose of producing seeds. Arjan's seeds are hybrids of the 2 basic subspecies of cannabis, indica and sativa. This engineering produces different flavors and different effects.
The cannabis sativa is grown around the equator, is a menthol high. It's a long plant with slim leaves and slim buds. And the indica is a smaller plant, and it's more a body stoned.
To create his unique strains, Arjan scours the world for different varieties of marijuana seed.
With my partner Franco, we go into the jungles of faraway countries. Could be Colombia, could be Jamaica, Africa.
The worldwide market for new marijuana varieties is huge, and developing new, more potent strains keeps Roskam's seed company in business. Arjan is traveling to Malawi in search of a strain alleged to be the best in Africa. It's known as Malawi Gold.
Up the top, or it was to work all the way down to the rift? Our expeditions are very complicated. They cost a lot of money. You start searching, you start smoking, you speak to the locals. From there on, you go far and far and try to find the fields and try to find the original.
In developing countries along the equator, marijuana is easily cultivated because of the warm tropical climate. In countries like Malawi, marijuana is a lucrative cash crop and a means of survival.
Malawi is a very, very poor country. A whole village or a whole family is depending on this harvest. And if they lose this harvest, some kids die, basically.
After 10 days of trekking in the mud, Roskam and his partner Franco strike gold. They take seed samples of the finest Malawi plants to bring back to Holland.
Unbelievable, no? Marvelous. This is very good, eh? This
I am seriously impressed by this.
How long you grow?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're a good farmer. We'll open it. Here we have...
Arjan keeps a seed bank that has close to 2,000 different strains of marijuana.
These are all the samples with all the codes and from where they come and which kind of varieties.
Arion's creations blend different strains to create potent hybrids with exotic names like Super Lemon Haze and Great White Shark. He then sells them for a hefty profit.
Roughly here you will see 25 to 30 kilos, so retail price between 2 and 3 million euros.
With the exception of America, where marijuana seed is illegal, Roskam is free to market his products around the world. In most countries, it's legal to buy seeds, but not to cultivate them. So Arion brands his seeds as souvenirs.
You see the different colors we have here? We have the cheese, we have the train wreck, we have the white rhino and the great white shark. I came with this idea 2 years ago, and it's probably the biggest hit ever in the seed business.
Each packet of 10 mixed seeds retails for around $75, and his company sells 400,000 packets of seeds annually. But the seed business is only one aspect of Arion's empire. The other is a chain of coffee shops.
I can show you maybe this.
Customers come not only to drink lattes, but to sample exotic marijuana.
The taste is more rich.
Holland is the only country in the world where marijuana can be purchased legally for recreational use, but with certain restrictions.
The rules and regulations are as follow. No transactions bigger than 5 grams a person a day is allowed in any coffee shop in Holland. No hard drugs in the shop is allowed. Of course, there's logic. No younger people under the age of 18 are allowed into the coffee shop at any time.
Failure to comply means a shop will be closed down. More than 1 million tourists a year travel to Amsterdam to smoke marijuana in the city's 234 coffee shops. The Dutch authorities believe they can keep marijuana from becoming a gateway to harder drugs by decriminalizing it and controlling its distribution.
That's what you prefer? The young people can go into a coffee shop and buy cannabis. And not like on the street where they buy in the left hand cannabis and in the right hand heroin or cocaine. Filters and papers is right there. Thank you.
The Dutch policy seems to be working. Holland has around 85% fewer hard drug overdoses than the United States and the lowest rate in Europe. But when it comes to supplying marijuana, Arion Roskam operates in a gray area. Although Dutch authorities tolerate the sale of small amounts, production and large-scale distribution remains illegal.
Having 4 coffee shops and making sure we have a steady supply every day is a very, very big target.
To obtain enough marijuana for his 3,000 daily customers, Arion must turn to commercial black market producers. He supplies them with seeds that they in turn use to grow marijuana for his coffee shops.
We work with 80 to 100 growers. It's a cat and mouse game between the police and the growers. What's the teeth?
Once the marijuana is purchased from the illicit suppliers, it must be cut and prepared in a safe house. Because coffee shop regulations allow only 500 grams on the premises at any given time. From the safe house, the marijuana is delivered to the coffee shop every few hours. Arion has turned his greenhouse business into a global brand. He sells everything from instructional DVDs to t-shirts and hats over the internet.
Very popular in Canada and America. This is also very funny. These are coasters.
And like many celebrities, he even has his very own doll.
The famous bobblehead. In Holland everybody laughed about it, but in America it's pretty popular.
The king of cannabis is enjoying his success.
I think I'm the most happy person in the world. I have the best job in the world. I made from my hobby, I made my work. I grow the most beautiful plants in the world. I meet all kinds of celebrities. I get invited all over the world. I'm the most happy guy in the world.
Arion Roskam's seeds and growing techniques have revolutionized the marijuana trade. Growers are now moving indoors to produce stronger varieties and make bigger profits. Kingston, Jamaica. On the outskirts of the city, a man going by the alias Paul is a small-time cultivator who grows high-grade marijuana.
Most of these strains are from Holland. The way the rest of the country grows weed, it's not the same as this. It's connoisseur level.
Paul's high-potency marijuana is known as Sinsemilla, or Cincy for short.
Cincy is just seedless, growing your harvest and not letting it pollinate. Whenever you breed the weed and it gets seeds, it loses its potency and also its flavor.
To produce marijuana without seeds, growers remove the male plants before flowering. This prevents the female plants from being pollinated and producing seeds. Cincy has higher levels of THC, the main psychoactive compound.
It's potent. They're up to 18-20% THC, very strong.
Most Jamaican marijuana is grown outdoors, but in order to produce the high-potency varieties that many of today's smokers demand, growers like Paul are joining the indoor growing revolution.
Welcome to my babies.
For the past 12 years, Paul has maintained his secret indoor garden.
All right.
Here, every aspect of growing is controlled, right down to the acidity or pH level of the soil.
If you're just pouring pipe water on a plant, pH is too high, the plant won't get a chance to pick the food up out the soil, and it's under-fertilized. I grow because I love to smoke. And if you want the best, you have to grow for yourself. I'm the only one I see in Jamaica that's doing this. These strains are called golden barbarillas. It's very potent. This is a lot of money. It sells for $500 US an ounce.
Marijuana farmers around the world are moving indoors to avoid detection by law enforcement. And growing higher potency varieties means more money.
You're going to get a lot of customers with good, strong weed.
In Jamaica, marijuana is part of everyday life. Up to 70% of the island's population smokes it.
Yes, God bless us all and sanctify us as we partake of this holy herb for the healing of the nation and for the meditation of man.
When smoked, marijuana produces a wide variety of effects, including everything from lethargy or an altered perception of time to increased appetite, paranoia, forgetfulness, or euphoria.
It lifts your thoughts, it lifts your mind. It makes you more tranquil, make you more meditative. It gives you more insight into yourself, into reality.
In the early 20th century, recreational marijuana use spreads from Jamaica and the West Indies to America. Popular among Mexican migrant workers and African-American jazz musicians, marijuana becomes a target for white xenophobia. In the 1930s, Federal Bureau of Narcotics Chief Harry Anslinger launches America's War on Drugs. He creates panic by claiming that marijuana leads to insanity, rape, and murder. Despite objections from the American Medical Association, Anslinger persuades Congress to outlaw the drug in 1937. During the 60s, marijuana is embraced by the growing counterculture. For many, smoking pot is an act of defiance against mainstream America. To the establishment, marijuana symbolizes the excesses of the hippie era.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug in America today.
Since the 1970s, the war on drugs has cost more than $2 trillion taxpayer dollars, but it hasn't eliminated marijuana. In fact, marijuana is so widespread that 41% of Americans admit to trying it, including even the president. Since marijuana was outlawed in the 1930s, stopping its use has been the main focus of America's war on drugs. While medical marijuana patients can legally consume it in 14 U.S. states, more than 800,000 people are arrested for illegal marijuana use every year. Cleveland, Tennessee. Drug Task Force Director Mike Hall and his team prepared to execute a search warrant on the house of a suspected marijuana dealer.
But if they come out of this house and we come in, especially if they look like one of our two suspects, I would try to get them. Say a word of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. I pray that you keep each man and woman in this room safe, that you'd give us quick reflexes, give us the judgment to do what's right. Let us fulfill that justice that you've called us to fulfill. In Christ's name, amen. All right, let's load up.
Marijuana is big business, and dealers will stop at nothing. The cops aren't taking any chances.
The one suspect has displayed firearms to our confidential informant, and the propensity for violence in this neighborhood is a little bit higher than most.
Tensions are running high as the van pulls up to the suspect's house. Within seconds, the police take control of the house. Out back, 2 more suspects are apprehended. Agents search the suspects as the children are taken outside.
Where's your mommy at, sweetie? Inside, she'll be out in a minute, okay?
Smoking bud out here?
No, I'm waiting on Burger.
He's gonna be able to read it.
Mike Hall questions the main suspect.
All right, is there any guns in the house?
Outside.
Marijuana was found on you, on your person. You said it's personal use. Is there any other marijuana inside the residence?
My person.
And where's that at?
The suspect directs the agents to his stash box. Inside, they find half an ounce of marijuana divided into 4 bags.
Ecstasy?
No, that's...
The suspect is likely dealing.
You got them individually wrapped up. You gonna sell them?
No, not those.
Not those?
Not those.
We've been looking at you longer than a few days. I know what's going on here.
We have purchased marijuana from here, namely you.
Under Tennessee state law, distributing marijuana weighing under 10 pounds is a felony and punishable by up to 6 years in prison. Marijuana may pass through 5 or 6 hands before it gets to a dealer like this one.
He ain't the bottom of the food chain, but he ain't top. This is his accounting paper. These sometimes is what people owe him. This is how much cash he's got in hand.
The marijuana supply chain often works on credit.
He owes his supply right now $360. Unfortunately, the typical cycle is still trying to find some other dope somewhere so he can make enough to pay off the supplier. You know, they're like repo men. You know, they want to get their $360 back, so they'll get it one way or another. Take your car, take your TV, you know, take your blood.
The marijuana seized by the Drug Task Force in Tennessee most likely originated from Mexico, which supplies nearly 40% of the marijuana consumed in America. El Paso, Texas. Located across the Rio Grande from the Mexican town of Juarez, this city is a high drug trafficking area. Every year, more than 100 tons of marijuana are seized at the El Paso ports of entry. William Molaski is the Customs and Border Protection Port Director in El Paso. As a senior customs officer, Molaski has been monitoring this port of entry for 2 years.
If you can think of a way to smuggle something into the country, we've seen it. You see false compartments in gas tanks, in the spare tires, in the trunk, in the roofs of cars, strapped to the legs of people, inside of shoes, baggage. The list is endless.
Molaski and his team are the front line of America's war on drugs. Agents from Customs and Border Protection are on high alert as they search cars and trucks for drugs. They suspect this vehicle is hiding illicit cargo.
We started inspecting the vehicle. We saw some anomalies with the tank, so then we went ahead and brought it in for further inspection.
The agents use a fiber optic telescope to get a better look inside the gas tank.
We believe it's contraband, either marijuana, cocaine.
The custom agents see something in the tank and decide to take a closer look. Inside are dozens of packages of compressed marijuana, vacuum-packed to prevent them from absorbing gasoline. The 68-pound seizure is worth $200 a pound in El Paso.
68.80.
By the time it reaches cities like New York, its value multiplies tenfold. This secret DEA warehouse stores the marijuana seized on the U.S.-Mexican border.
This warehouse on any given week is filled with, 12, 15,000 pounds or more of marijuana.
Every year, more than 1 million pounds of marijuana passes through here before it's destroyed. The cross-border marijuana trade is dominated by the Mexican drug cartels.
Marijuana is important to the cartels because it really is the lifeblood, the economic lifeblood for how these cartels operate.
60% of their revenue, or around $8.6 billion, comes from trafficking marijuana.
Marijuana it's almost like printing press for them. It's really the engine that drives all of their other narcotic trafficking activities.
The endless demand for marijuana fuels the bloodshed on Mexico's streets. Two of Mexico's biggest drug gangs, the Sinaloa and the Juarez cartels, are fighting a war over El Paso's strategic location.
These organizations see themselves as industries, and they are in it for profit. And they're willing to kill, and they're willing to do whatever they have to do to make sure that their business continues to receive profits.
The war over lucrative smuggling routes has turned Juarez, Mexico, into the murder capital of the world.
They are fighting over their turf, and whoever at the end is left standing will be able to profit from this area.
The worldwide marijuana market is estimated to be worth $142 billion annually, and the Mexican drug cartels are fighting for their share. In California, the Mexican cartels' profits are being eroded by the mom-and-pop operators who supply the booming legal medical marijuana business. People from all over America are flocking to California to be part of the so-called Green Rush. Northern California. Here, a group of medical marijuana smokers are so fanatical about their use of the plant, they've formed their own church. The Reverend Steve Cherms runs the United Cannabis Ministry.
It's a non-denominational church, so we don't try to focus people's certain beliefs, but we do believe that the cannabis plant is the tree of life. It is our God-given right to use the tree of life. Lift up your tongue.
Every Sunday, Cherms and his followers begin the day with a mixture of liqueur and marijuana.
You want your tincture, young lady?
The Reverend Steve Cherms has been smoking marijuana for 39 years. Today, he uses it to relieve pain from ruptured discs in his back and neck.
I just can't focus with the pain, so a little bit of hashish, 2 marijuana cigarettes, and ready to go for the day.
To become a part of the church congregation, members must share Cherms' passion for marijuana.
And my favorite thing, next victim. Now I will be able to just kind of slow down and talk to you guys without being like in a haze,
Reverend Cherms makes sure his followers hold legal California medical cannabis cards.
Then they can, consume cannabis legally, even though we should be able to use the tree of life legally anyway. It's God's law, but, we'll follow the rules in California.
In October, the church's legal marijuana crop is ready for harvest.
We grow for everybody that's in the church that cannot grow for themselves or have no spot to do it.
Church members believe freedom of religion, no matter how strange, is protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
Here, young lady. And in the Constitution, we have the right to use whatever religious sacrament we want. And this is our religious sacrament.
Seasonal workers pour into California to help with the harvest. They're known as clippers, and they get paid in pot.
It kind of averages between half ounce to an ounce a day, and they trim 1 or 2 days. I think they usually go home with an ounce, and it's enough sacrament for their week or 2 weeks that they need.
The Reverend and his followers were recently evicted from their church because the landlord didn't agree with their religious beliefs. So now, Cherms holds an informal service in his home, while the clippers manicure the harvested buds.
Anybody else like to try some?
Before church begins, Cherms and his congregation take more sacraments.
We're all guardians of cannabis. We all have to have it. And there's no kings, no queens, no emperors of this. We're all the same. And the plant needs us to be the guardian of it. What they say, the healing of the nations. The healing of the nations. Anybody else like to try some hash, Lou?
Eventually, the service begins. Rather than preaching from the pulpit, Cherms prefers a more relaxed approach to religion.
Sunday sermon for the United Cannabis Ministry.
In the comfort of his armchair, he delivers his sermon from a laptop.
Genesis 1:29. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth. Does this seem like the herb that we have in our hands? Is it possible this could be the herb they're talking about?
Definitely.
Cherms champions the virtues of cannabis over other commonly abused substances.
Tobacco kills 340,000 to 450,000 people a year. There's 150,000+ people a year die from alcohol related, and that's not accidents, car accidents. That's alcohol consumption, killing 150,000 people a year. As let's talk about illicit overdose and drug use, 3,800 to 5,200 deaths a year. And my favorite, cannabis, 0 deaths every year. I've never been recorded 1 death from the use of cannabis.
Marijuana is now California's biggest cash crop, outselling corn, vegetables, even grapes.
You're so dry otherwise.
While hundreds of thousands of people in California are now legally growing and consuming medical marijuana, there's still a thriving illegal industry, dominated by the Mexican drug cartels. Across California, illegal marijuana farms are springing up in state parks. Lake County, Northern California, 10 a.m. Agent Ryan Pontecorvo, an eradication team commander from the Campaign Against Marijuana Planting, or CAMP, is searching for an illegal marijuana farm known as a grow.
And they thin out the brush just enough so that the plants can get the sunlight. but the color is so fluorescent against the natural foliage, it just pops. It's hard to hide.
During the summer growing season, he and his team work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Soon, Agent Pontecorvo spots some crops.
Oh yeah, we got 1, 2, 3 plots.
To the untrained eye, it's nearly impossible to see. But Pontecorvo has spent the last 5 years busting marijuana growers. Armed and ready, camp agents hike through the brush toward the illegal marijuana farm.
When you do the sneak-ins, that's when the potential for violence is there. Most all the growers, they're always armed.
These farmers heard the agents coming and have already fled. But the agents remain on high alert while they remove the illegal plants.
Right now, since I call it the race, once you see it, you got to pull it because it's all money. They made it this far, they want it out. So the likelihood of potential armed confrontation would be now because basically we're taking money from them.
They bring in their food.
Agents discover the farmers' abandoned camp.
They just got a food drop. This bag is full of food that just...
Many grow farmers are illegal immigrants.
Came in.
The people are smuggling in the United States. Part of their payment back to the smugglers is to be inserted into different areas in California to set up marijuana commercial grows.
The operations are financed by Mexican drug lords, but the kingpins are rarely caught.
A grow like this probably cost them, with all the food and getting these guys in here, I don't know, maybe a $10,000 investment to get it going. Chemicals and everything, and that might be in the high end. Depending on what the plant count here is, they can make a profit of $1 million or a couple. You know, they sell it wholesale at the low end. So for a small investment, they're getting a big return.
The marijuana plantations have a devastating impact on the surrounding environment.
They cut the trees, they cut the underbrush, they clear it out. They'll bring poisons in to kill the animals. Deer will eat it, because deer love eating the plants. This is all your typical landscape water pipe. You have your feeder tubes off a main line. What they'll do is they'll run this, I've seen it run for miles, to a stream where they'll dam up the stream and divert it. A lot of times they'll put chemicals in the water. So they're poisoning the waters, they're taking public land, running people off who should be enjoying it for recreation.
Ryan and his team remove more than 3,000 plants, with an estimated street value of $6 million. For them, the war on drugs is never ending.
It is a game. They try to hide it, and we try to find it. And once we find it, we take it. So it's a never-ending battle.
Whether it's an evil weed, a cash crop, a life-saving medicine, or simply a recreational drug, marijuana polarizes public opinion. And thanks to advances in horticultural science, it can now be grown anywhere on the planet and is used by more people than ever before. 70 years of prohibition have failed to stamp out marijuana production, and it continues to line the pockets of the world's most ruthless criminals.